It's really adorable. Oh my gosh, my hair's all crazy. My masseuse is named Tyler. Good to see you. Welcome. Well, we're at episode number 43, and today we're going to be talking about communication. And it's not communication in the way that normally we would talk about communication. It's going to be a little nuanced because I like to add a little bit of flair. And so, welcome first and foremost. My name is Amelie, and I am the host and founder of Solistic Intelligence and Solistic Intelligence podcast. And you are on my channel, and you found your way here through the miracles of however. I don't know all the ins and outs of how you found me, but thank you so much for joining me. I'm on a spree to get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you're watching this and so inclined, please make sure that you go ahead and subscribe, follow my channel. And for those of you that have public accounts, I give a follow back so you can increase your subscribers as well. Hello, Mike. Yeah, everyone buy my book. I should have put my link in the thing. Probably near the end of the month, I'll get a little bit more crazy about that. So, oh yeah, I should say my book is called The $8 Truth Exposing a $380 billion Lie. It's a side quest project. It's a prequel to the bigger book that I'm going to be creating and authoring based on the digital age, the change from analog to digital, from the internet and some of the early digital landscapes like e-commerce, email, the way communication changed, how cell phones were introduced, and now we have all of these different devices that can do so many things, up to watches, and even including BCI, which is brain computer interfaces. So, the brain computer interfaces, I've been kind of digging in to figure out how are they tapping into our thoughts, and then two, how are they going to remove these peripherals, meaning mice, keyboards, other devices that we use to communicate with technology? And how is technology going to be uploading our thoughts, our emotions, like all that stuff? So if you guys are interested in that, please definitely give me a like because that is very fascinating and all that stuff. Hi, really, fuck, I am going. I don't know what that means. Okay, so let's talk about the name of the episode today. Episode 43 is called Earth Speak versus, or maybe not even versus, or and air talk. So I'm on Substack, by the way. So if you guys are on Substack, go give me a follow there as well. Or sub, I think it's what it's going on. I don't know what the heck is going on. But I was on Substack and I was reading some articles, and one of my friends, she did an article on how she grew up, and she's from Scotland, and it was interesting to see. She's a little, older than I am, maybe by 5 years, and I'm 41, by the way. I'll be 42 in a couple weeks. But she was writing about how she grew up in Scotland and how Glasgow has changed from, you know, when she was growing up to now how she has been experiencing Scotland in general. And she's a little, nomadic and very fun, very artistic. She does photography and is an amazing, just dimensional person, which a lot of people in our generations tend to be. However, our generations also speak different ways depending on when they grew up and where they grew up. So one of the cool things that I did in 2021 is I sold my house, I bought an RV, and I traveled across the United States. Now, mind you, this is during COVID, so it was a little tenuous of, are we going to be able to do that? What is the landscape? And everything was still just kind of open and slightly restricted because people who were traveling or going out and about were not necessarily. Hi, Sophie. Hello, buddy. How are you? I'm good. Tyler, good to see you. I think I did a cool river lunch break called Lunch by the River. I think I forgot to tune it to public, and I think it might still be private because I was looking for it. I wanted to send it to my friend I'm talking about. But she did this really beautiful, and she had all these photographs of Scotland that she had taken. And so it was a beautiful landscape, which is important to what I'm going to be talking about. And then also just she was able to see Prince and Jamiroquai. I don't know if you guys know who Jamiroquai is. They did a song that was a big hit called Virtual Insanity. This is back in the 1999 2000s. But she was able to see all these really amazing artists, and that was just the scene at the time. And it really was back in the 90s. It really was like go out to concerts, and that's how you kind of engaged with people. So what do I mean when I say Earth speak, air talk? Hi, Sophie. Oh, thanks, Sophie, or Sophie. How do you say that? What I'm talking about is communication, and it's also connection. So we have these two different kind of states, but they are very much integrated because when we communicate, we're connecting. Like you guys are connecting with me in this virtual room or metaverse, so to speak. Like I've created this unique metaverse. And so when I talk about communicating, I'm also talking about that connection because we all desire to have a really strong connection. Okay? And for a lot of us, it feels really difficult. It feels really hard to communicate. Now, in the digital age, I talked about digital dating, and it kind of opened up my world to what was going on. So even in e-commerce, what did it do? It opened up the world to things that you can purchase. And now it's gone so far as we can go onto Amazon and get something next day. It's that efficient, and it was unheard of back in the 90s when I was growing up to have something that fast. Everything took, we were still ordering out of catalogs, out of like magazine catalogs. We'd go through the catalog and say, I want this. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Delia. It was like this, it was aimed at young women, and it had clothing and all that stuff. eBay, no? Okay. Bay? Are you baying me? What's going on here? Okay, so when e-commerce came out, there was something called the dot-com boom. And the dot-com boom happened in the 90s, and everybody was getting all their domain addresses, so like whatever .com, and that was the .com boom. Everyone was getting all these boom. Okay. Oh. Thanks, Sophie. So if you think about how truly unique that was, that you were able to go onto the computer, load up the dial-up, and go on to, say, eBay, or even Amazon at the time had books. That's all they specialized in, was you can get any book. We're selling it cheap. And so people would go to Amazon to purchase books. And eventually now you can see how strong of a presence Amazon has, and now the efficiency of how quickly we can get it. It's almost like in the Fifth Element, Lilu goes over and she pushes a button on what looks like a microwave, and she puts a plate in, she pushes the button, and she opens the door immediately, and then a whole rotisserie chicken comes out. That's essentially where we're at right now. I mean, there's still some time that takes, but it's very little time. Willie, hello, is this the LGBTQ channel for Zesty Uncles? It is not. You might have to find another channel. There's millions of other ones that might have it on there. Mike says Finger Hut. Yeah, Finger Hut. Catalogs. So, and even then, it took a while to get stuff, right? Back in the day, it took, a couple weeks to maybe even a month. It wasn't unheard of to get something within 5 to 6 weeks of ordering it. It was really interesting. Life with Nabil. How old are you, dear? And kid too. I'm happy to see. Well, thank you for joining. Hello. Welcome to Celestic Intelligence Podcast. And I am doing well. My child is doing well. Thank you. You're beautiful. So when e-commerce bloomed, it was, people were like, I don't even know if eBay would work. So eBay is an online auction site. People were like very questioning of, is this going to work or not? They didn't know. They thought that you could not trust ordering anything online, that it would come to you and that the seller would provide whatever service or goods that you're buying on eBay. It's mostly goods. And that actually was not true. It was very successful. People did trust this site to get their auctioned goods from there. And so it really set the tone for e-commerce going forward to where now it's, I mean, frankly, if you've never ordered anything online, that's very rare. Whereas in the 90s, it was the opposite. It was very rare for you to order anything online. Okay? Looking beautiful and gorgeous. Thank you. All right. So why am I talking about this? So when we look at that, then we move into, 10 years later, 15 years later, and now digital dating exploded. And before digital dating, before e-commerce, everything was really person to person, like in person, live. So the way that the generations were brought up has a lot to do with it. The way that people were rural versus city, like there is a different language that people use. Even I brought up me traveling across the country, I could tell in different regions how their region, like the environment, meaning the landscape, the natural beauty, or the natural makeup of each region has this unique influence on people. And in my Blood and Bones stream that I did a few weeks ago, I also highlighted that the unique environment that you're in, because of the way that our body is made, and it has this bone structure that is diamagnetic. Diamagnetic means that it pulls things into it. It's a magnet it's the side that pulls into it. So the unique makeup of our bone structure, our skeletal structure, actually pulls in isotopes from the environment that we're in. I always pray to God your success and all your problems resolve. Amen. Yes, please send out those good vibes. Send them to you too. So when we think about that and we think about how our environment affects us, not just physically, but in the way that we communicate, it's very interesting, okay? So let's really dive into this. I'm not fireside. It's too warm outside to fireside chat with you guys right now, but so let's look at this dissonance that's been created in this shift, because there is this age shift, a digital age shift, where it is kind of in this muddy spot where when you're communicating with somebody that is not from your country, your region, your hometown, all of that stuff, when people are so unique, and I don't know what countries you guys are in. I have a lot of people from India that tune in. I have people from the East Coast that tune in. I have people from Pakistan and Uzbekistan that have popped in and said hi. And so I have this unique audience that are, they're listening to me and they're communicating and connecting with me, even though I'm like in my own region. And there's something about it that resonates, okay? But I bring up digital dating, I bring up the regions, I bring up e-commerce, because when the internet populated, now it's opened up. Like normally you would have your hometown. Now with technology, it's opened up to where I can talk to people if they tune in from, Turkey, from China, from, whatever area in the world, they can tune in and listen to my stream. So it's very interesting. Yeah, see, Naval is from Pakistan. Aw. So when let's look at it a little bit, because I was thinking as I'm reading this Substack, as I'm communicating with people, and I have a job that has kind of this generation separation, but we're all having to merge together. And so it's interesting to kind of parallel that to what happened with the internet and what happened with our way of connecting and our way of communicating with each other. So first and foremost, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, because when we look at the way that I grew up. So I grew up in a very rural environment. It was just my family, barely a hometown. I didn't stay in the same area, so it was really just my family. It was a constant, and everything else kind of moved around, as far as friends and family. Like I didn't see them very much. It was just my immediate family. So my two brothers, my mom, and her boyfriend, eventually husband. And so I could say my stepfather. And we spent most of the time, if I wasn't in school, we spent most of the time, it wasn't in daycare, it was out in the mountains. Okay, so I have this unique experience that molded me into who I am, because I grew up so close to the earth. I grew up with like outdoors all the time, climbing trees, riding my bike without supervision, hanging out with my brothers, a lot of the times hanging out with myself, climbing a tree and just like hanging out in the tree for hours on end, because that's what I like to do. Picking flowers, and just wandering around and exploring on my own. A lot of the times I was barefoot, I was swimming in just all different bodies of water, which was my favorite thing. Very much in touch with the sky, with the seasons, because of where I grew up. And so I have this unique connection to Earth, because I grew up listening and hearing what the rhythm of the Earth was. So in the way that I speak, it's very earth-centered. There's a lot of earth-centered in it. It's very grounded, very stable, which is what we're going to get into. We're going to look at the language of the elements. Now, that's the earth part. Now, a lot of, like my children, they're 13 and 20, didn't really grow up in the same way that I did. And so the way that they interact with the world is through a lot of technology. It's just everywhere. Back when I was a kid, you had to sign off, like, it's okay. I think you still have to, but you had to sign off that it's okay for my child to interact with technology. And if you didn't have the permission slip, you did not touch technology, which a lot of people did. I think the Jehovah's Witnesses were very much no technology whatsoever. Okay, so it was very, very strict, and it still is to that extent. But now we are, like, I just signed my son up for school, and I remember that there was a technology clause in it, or permission that I had to sign off, that this technology is going to be used. Is it okay if they watch PG-13 movie C-13 in school, and all of that stuff? But it was so new that it was stark compared to how the generation that was raising me grew up. All right, so I grew up listening to and hearing and understanding the rhythm of the earth. So I have a really deep connection with that. Whereas, like, the air, the children of the air, which is the technology connection, those children, and to an extent, maybe even more, the Zoomers, and likely some of the younger millennials have this. That's all they know is television, internet, phones, all of this instant access to information. That's all they know. So they speak this different language because their language wasn't the way that I grew up. So it's a very polarized opposite end of the spectrum. Okay. Violation and live to avoid suspension. Okay. Aw. Any technology is available, you accept. Okay. So when we look at that, the air communicators are born with a lot of that noise that comes from technology. They're born with the notifications and this algorithm and the news feed, the information feed, which, if you're getting a lot of notifications, can really throw you off a little bit because it is a lot of information. It is a lot to take on, which is one of the things that during the digital age discovery or investigation that I've been doing really pointed out to me, like how much it's interfering with our own nervous system. Okay. So we have on one end, I was kind of describing the way I grew up, is very connected to the earth, very connected to the body. And just that was the norm. That was a norm. And I didn't grow up in a big city. So even in my circumstance, if I was going to pair myself with another similarly aged millennial, or even a young Gen Xer, my life could be very much different from theirs. Okay? Because growing up in a city versus growing up in a rural area it's different. You get different isotopes, you get different information. There's a different way of life that you connect with from your younger self. Okay, so we've got this body versus the feed. The feed is that technology, continuous information coming in. And then on the other end, you have, this heartbeat where you're in your physical presence versus having like highlight reels. And I get tied up in highlight reels, but I couldn't even imagine growing up how that would affect me and how different I would be if that was the way that I grew up. Okay. So when we look at how are we speaking in our own elemental languages. And we'll talk about fire and water too. But the earth and the air are definitely here kind of not connected unless you really work on it. And we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's talk about the elements. And we're going to be using some metaphors. So each type of element is an energetic, it's a certain energetic frequency, okay? The way that they relate, the way that they relate. So earth is very tactile, patient. It's rooted in this bodily wisdom, like it can tell. And it's very reliable. Like I said, the stability of the earth speaker, somebody that is of the earth, like really natural, very connected to the rhythms, they're going to understand that rhythm and have a lot of presence, and they're going to be trustworthy. Like you're going to be able to trust them because their physical rhythm is speaking without them really saying anything. And the earth does not move fast, okay? It's not a fast mover. If you think about the earth, you know, some people are like, oh yeah, it's barreling at it still goes slow. Okay, it's not a fast thing. It's a giant world that we're here, that we're existing in. And so when you're an earth speaker, you want to know that whomever you're connecting with is going to stay with you. Okay. Now let's contrast that to the air talkers. Okay, the air is very cerebral. It's very quick. There's a lot of ideas, you know, we're thinking, we're mind. Whereas the earth is more matter. The air is more mind, thinking, ideas, very stimulated by novelty and very stimulated by words. The air wants to hear all the words, and I can relate to this. I do like to hear people talk, and I like to, I love novelty as well, so because I'm that millennial that's kind of been, I was raised a certain way, but then I was integrated into technology, and we'll talk about the Gen Xers, millennials, and the Zoomers, and the differences and the nuances that they have. So the air loves to spark a conversation. They don't necessarily like to have that silence in between, whereas the earth is very much okay with being at stillness and silence and that stability and that slowness. Air is a little bit more quick. They want to know the thing. They want whatever they ordered on Amazon tomorrow. They're not, the patience really isn't there. And so you can see how these two different elements kind of butt up against each other and hit each other. Hi, LA, or La. I don't know how to say that. So moving on, let's talk about fire elemental. The fire element is very passionate, very spontaneous, and very action driven. So it kind of relates to the air very easily. Okay, very much related. They can kind of dance together very well. Fire thinks through it. Fire communicates through intensity and through action. And if it's not a thrilling thing, then it's like, it's not alive. So think about how fire, I do the fireside chats. Think about how fire moves. Okay, it's hot. It could explode at any moment. It's, like I said, it's very spontaneous. And so it wants to feel that aliveness. So when you're speaking with that passion, when you're speaking with spontaneity, it's like very connected to that. Now, water types are very emotional, okay? They're emotional, they're intuitive, and they're very cyclical. And so those who can speak in that water fluidity understand they're very connected to this deep emotional piece that is residing within them. Now, because you're a Gen Xer, it doesn't automatically make you an Earth. It doesn't automatically make you an air, okay? We all have different ways of connecting and communicating, but it's important to analyze and really figure out, like, how am I speaking and how is this other person speaking to me? My my older son, he's very fiery. He's very air-like. He's always been very quick, always been very active, just goes, and says the things and then like kind of peters out and needs a little rest and relaxation before going on again. Whereas my younger son, even though he's very technologically savvy, he's a lot more slow and patient and not really fiery. He's very much earthy. He's got this slowness. And he's a Gen Alpha, so it's not relegated to any of the generations. It's just the different generations have different interactions in the way that they grew up. Okay, let's talk about this generational divide. Aw, thank you. Let's talk about the generational divide though. So we've got the Gen X generation, and that was up, I think, until 1980s, kind of the cutoff time. And so the Gen X, I like to joke with them that they're the invisible generation, because people will joke about boomers and they'll joke about millennials, but nobody talks about the Gen Xers. Well, we're going to talk about them, but I like to joke with my fellow Gen Xers about them being the invisible generation. So the Gen X is really, especially the elder Gen Xers, they're really the last analog generation. And yeah, they do interact with technology, but they definitely grew up with very little technology. I mean, some of the technology that I grew up with when I was like, you know, I don't even think I was 10 yet, was very archaic boob tube, if you guys know what that terminology is, bulky. It worked, but it was bulky, huge televisions. And they call them boob tubes because the bulb inside of them was huge. And then I think when you turned it off, it like took time, and so you could see it like it would like turn off and then it would come into this little dot and then go out. But so the Gen Xers were definitely rooted in this touch and this time, and they were going out and interacting with their friends, and very largely because of how the boomers were unsupervised for a large part. It was just part of the generation. And one of the people I know that I commonly talk about on the podcast is BioCharisma, and he does astrology. He's been doing astrology readings, and he said the boomer generation, their Pluto was in Leo, and Leo is a very fun and playful and fiery, very childlike sign. So when you have that Pluto in Leo, the boomers were kind of like, children. And, they raised the Gen Xers. And so the Gen Xers being largely unsupervised, it was like having, an older brother or older sister that just, yeah, they're here, but they're just like totally into their own thing. So that stereotype sits there because of that. And now not everybody is like that, but it's just a stereotype that is there. What is this channel about? Rotary phones. Yeah, rotary phones. Um, I I mean, it's called Celestic Intelligence, and I talk about things from soul, emotions, connections, and today I'm talking about communication styles. Let's see. My birthday star is Aries. Oh, very fiery. That's a fiery one. Um, my birthday's coming up in a couple weeks. So the Gen Xers, they were raised by the boomers, and but they still were rooted in time. They were, kind of doing their own thing. Like they were able to do their own thing. Had to be responsible. I'm thinking about some of the Gen Xers I know, like, they are very independent. They're very self-sufficient because when they were growing up, that was the environment that they grew up in. And that doesn't necessarily like relegate them to being a certain way, but that's like how it was. Now, the millennials are interesting because the millennials are the first generation that really had to see this transition from analog to digital. So they are both rooted in the tactile, natural nature. Like I talked about how I grew up very tactile, very nature bound. But as I got older, I was born in 83. As I got older, technology started becoming a more and more and more thing. I look at my son and I'm like, dude, when I was 12, I was like henpecking the keyboard trying to type out stuff that I was used to just writing out. So I was writing all of these research papers by hand. And even in school, as I got older, I still had to write stuff by hand and then type it out. So I had to have that tactile nature. My son at age 12 is just like, and it's crazy how well the alpha generation has adapted to technology. It's like they grew up with it and now they can use it and function very well using it. So the millennials are really caught between worlds. Okay. The interesting thing about the being between these two worlds is that, like I said earlier, just because I am a nature or earthbound, or maybe even some of the other people around me are like were raised in a similar fashion as I was, we also have like a lot of city. There's a lot of city. I remember when I was, how old was I? I think I was in fifth grade, sixth grade. I think it was fifth grade. New Kids on the Block was like the thing. And I had just moved to a coastal town. I was completely rural. Moved into a coastal town, and all of the girls were just fangirling over New Kids on the Block. I don't even think they acronymed it. But I remember they had pillows and, you know, t-shirts with New Kids on the Block on it, posters on their wall with New Kids on the Block. And, it was really this like fangirl boy band before boy bands were a thing. And I was just like, who is New Kids on the Block? Who is this? Caught between worlds. Truly and seriously caught between worlds. That was in 95, 96. So you can see, like, even in my teens, it was like starting to transition. Now, we still hung out in person a lot because social media wasn't a thing. Cell phones weren't a thing. We had landlines and all that good stuff. But I really still hadn't experienced city life. And it wouldn't be until I got older, a few more years, that I would experience what it was like to be living a city life as a millennial versus the rural life millennial. Okay. So you really have this difference between worlds. And then the Zoomers are just completely native. The Zoomers started, I think, in 95 is when they were born. So 95 to 2000s. I think to 2010. 2010 is the cutoff for the end of Zoomers, and then that begins Gen Alpha. Now, they were, young, but pretty much grew up with the internet, with computers, with, we didn't have streaming services yet, but as they got into their teens, now they have cell phones. And now you really have this strong technological way of communicating and connecting. All right. So you can see how this transition has really affected the way that people connected and the way that people communicated. What does this all mean? Well, now it's gotten to the point of where old school hanging out in person with people is almost foreign, and everyone hangs out online. Gaming, dating, communicating, like calling somebody, these are often last resort things. Even so much as, concerts. This is all becoming virtual. So we're like moving in this direction. And I think some of the Gen X and millennials are having a hard time with this divide of how do I connect? My birthday is on the 24th. Okay. So let's think about how these play out in work and play out in any relationships that we have. Now, even millennial to millennial, if it's a rural versus city millennial, there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect. Back in the Westerns, if you ever watch them, it's like they have the rural cowboy type has this element of disgust towards the city folk. They're like, you're city folk. And I think that's the best analogy for this divide. So remember when I was talking about the digital dating and the e-commerce and how it kind of exploded everything, and now you're connected with all different kinds of people without being in person and like having a really deep conversation of, I'm connecting with you. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What was it like? Did you grow up in a city? Did you grow up rural? Did you grow up this way? Did you grow up that way? If you don't have those basic elemental understandings of whomever you're communicating with, you can kind of feel this disconnection. Okay. So we have this generational disconnection that can play a part. We have this way of speaking that can play a part. And then furthermore, the interaction with digital technology and the effects it has on our nervous systems also has a part to play in all of this. Meaning that if you're trying to communicate with somebody and you're not getting all of the information about who you're speaking with, you're not going to be able to make a really solid connection. I keep wasp and hornets as pets. Do you, Levi? I got bit by a wasp twice this summer. Never been bit by a wasp. Twice. And I was thinking about it this morning because I was like, why did those yellow jackets bite me? And I think it's because I use coconut oil, and it's the unrefined coconut oil, so it smells like coconuts. And I think they were just trying to taste me. It's like, is this food or not? And I think they thought I was food. Okay. But I was also singing to a couple of the spiders that I have outside on my patio, because there was one spider, and then another spider came and set up house. And I was like, oh, hey, what's going on, buddy? And it moved. And so I started singing like sounds to it because I was like, ah, I wonder what it is listening to. What time right now your side? It's 6:19. I've kept them for, I started back in 2015 and I still do it today to this day. Oh, interesting. Do you keep their like nests? Some people make some cool art with that. All right. So, going back to this, when you have a plethora of people that are on a dating site and they're trying to match by algorithm, like they're trying to match you according to algorithm of, okay, these are your interests, that's their interests, let's pair them together. The technology isn't, I don't think it's smart enough to like see, oh, this person, because maybe you don't include all of this stuff in it. This person is going to match with this person. And a lot of the time, I see one of my friends is just constantly like striking out, striking out, striking out. And God love him, he still keeps going at it. But there is an interesting disconnection in that dating, the way that people date. So really, if we're thinking about all of these different communication styles and how are they connecting, it's not surprising to me that the way that people can communicate with each other are disconnected because of how much has opened up to us, because we can only really have about 200 to 250, I can't remember the number, it's somewhere in there, connections at a time. That's all our body, our mind can like manage at a time. So having thousands, and I'm guilty of that, I have over 1,000 people on my friends on Facebook, but it's impossible for you to connect with all of those people and keep up with all of their things that they have going on past, I think it's like 200 or 250. Wait, I keep them, I have like this room, I keep them in the one of my old guest rooms, and that's how I keep them. It's quite fun. That's interesting. Do they ever fight each other? Aw, thanks, Nabo. You're sweet. Okay, so let's think about this nervous system factor of what the nervous system and how it is interacting. So when I was looking at the bones and blood, I think it was blood and bones or bones and blood stream that I did, it was because I was really contemplating how is the technology that they're creating able to upload our thoughts, able to upload our actions, able to upload our emotions. Like, how is it able to connect with us? Most people I ask, how are you feeling? They couldn't even answer me. Like, I probably couldn't have done it like 2 years ago of how are you feeling? I would just be like, okay, don't talk to me. I'm working, It's like, leave me alone. So, how is technology able to, go in and extract that? And that's when if you want to hear about, what I was talking about, go to my Blood and Bones stream. It was very interesting, very revelationary. So it was cool. If I put a hornet and a wasp, if they get out, they're like in the same room together, they fight. Yeah, I would imagine that they would be very territorial because of their pheromones. I've kept spiders, but not wasps and not hornets. And not since 2015. That's 10 years too long, Levi. That's crazy. Okay, but let's talk about the nervous system. So, what I discovered in that, as I was researching all of that, is that what essentially is being created in this digital technology race is a synthetic body, a giant synthetic body mimicking our own bodies, okay? It's mimicking our own bodies. So this giant synthetic nervous system is being created. And if you are not aware of it, you are likely, you might be affected by it. So the nervous system, we really have to be conscious and thinking about how are we going to regulate it, because the dysregulation is what is creating this disconnection. It's what's creating this dysregulation, okay? That dysregulated system. So we want to ground it in embodiment. If you're very air-like, it's coming to understand how the earth moves. How does the earth move? How am I moving? How can I move a little bit more like the earth but still maintain myself? Because, you know, the core of how we communicate is what makes us unique. For wasp and hornets, they're two different things, so that's why they would fight. Well, I think like even wasps against other wasps would fight. They're very aggressive. Aw, you're so sweet, Nabel. All right. So let's think of like a frozen earth type. I can get like this, especially if I get really annoyed. I'll just be like, I'm not talking to you. You don't exist. I'm frozen. You don't get access. Freeze. Compared to maybe somebody who's fiery and they're like, no, you need to say the thing. You need to do this, blah, 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 blah. Like, be alive. Don't be frozen. You're dead to me. You're dead. Metaphorically speaking. Metaphorically dead. But, or even a flighty air type. Somebody who's very cerebral. If they're around if you're a very cerebral person and you're around somebody that is a frozen earth type, that's just like, I'm shut down. You don't get access. I'm done. I'm like, hell's frozen over. Too bad, so sad. You can imagine that disconnect, that the misreading of what each person is under if you can't connect and understand. The earth would do best to understand the earth type, and the earth type would do best to understand the air type and like meet in the middle in a harmony. So for earth types, they need some slowness in order to feel safe. The flighty air type that's coming at them, asking them a bunch of questions and trying to get to the bottom of the thing, they're going to have a hard time connecting with each other. Same as with the earth. If they're trying to speak, I mean, let's be honest, you guys. I get into many disagreements because I can be a little airy, all right? Lots of questions, very cerebral. I'm on here talking about all different kinds of deep, esoteric, crazy things that not a lot of people talk about. And you guys are lovely listeners. But my son and I, we communicate very differently. And sometimes it just comes to a head and we butt heads because I can be very airy, and he is very earthy. So he's just like, I said the thing. And I'm like, oh, you're kind of like me, but also not, because I'm like asking all the questions. Okay. So let's be, this is not relegated to generations. He doesn't like me talking about him, but so the earth needs slowness in order to feel safe. So the air coming at and saying, hey, blah, 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 da, 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 is going to make that earth person very uncomfortable. And likewise, you know, it's going to make the air person uncomfortable to not hear anything, to hear nothing but silence. It's going to be difficult. Oh my gosh. Okay. Wait. So one day I didn't know it was that a wasp had gone out of its habitat, and I went over to the hornet's nest that I had in the corner, and the hornets swarmed that wasp. Oh, that's crazy. Did you get it on video? Is this on video, Levi? Because I'm subbing to your channel. If it's on your channel, I want to see it. So, the earth needs slowness to feel safe, and the air will feel trapped if things are moving too slow. Okay. And oh, beautifully, I can end maybe in an hour. So I'm gonna say a couple closing things because I feel like I've talked these things out quite a bit, and I need to go feed my child. But as we're looking at how do we restore this, as we're looking at how can we translate the earth in the air, how can we find harmony of all these communication styles, all these different types of people, the diversity, how do we find the common ground? Okay. So, really, it's understanding what is my speaking style. You know, we talked about the elements of how the elements speak to each other. And listening beneath the words, not listening of what the words are, but listening beneath the words, meaning you understand somebody's generation, you understand somebody's upbringing, because the upbringing is going to make a difference. Like all of these things are going to make a difference. The upbringing, consider the generation that you're speaking to. You know, certain generations have certain anxieties, certain generations have certain proclivities. And so you want to be really open and hearing what's going on beneath the words of what I'm hearing. And first and foremost, like if you're truly struggling with this, check your own nervous system. Okay. So we entrain to each other's nervous systems. You know, I started a new job and now I'm having to entrain myself to how does this person react? How does this person like to have their day set up? How does this person like to communicate? How, you know, how are we connecting? All right. So, really getting into regulating your own system first. I have found that the more I'm outdoors, the more I'm in nature, the more I'm pushing myself of hiking, biking, walking, swimming, exercising, all of that stuff, the more that I do that, the better I sleep and the calmer I am. Okay, I'm getting a lot of that extra angst energy out. In fact, this morning, maybe I'll close with that. I'll tell you about my morning this morning. Aw, navel. Um, just seeing my notes here. All right. I have a poem here, a poetic thing of what I'm talking about. So, the Earth Woman is not old fashioned. She's the original frequency, meaning she's that grounded wisdom that we all have, okay? The air man is not shallow, he's just searching for the sky that he lost, okay? So, air people are just searching for something that they feel that they lost. And earth people, they're listening to the original natural frequency, okay, the natural rhythm, the cycles, really connecting with that masculine and feminine energy. And really, at the end of the day, we need to have this both within ourselves, in harmony with ourselves, because once we're firm and well grounded and embodied in both the air and the earth elements within ourselves, okay, that masculine and feminine energy connecting with them, with each other, and working in harmony and tandem and not overstepping, it becomes easier. You become more patient, you become more curious, and not in an annoying way. You won't be annoyed. Well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, dude, I talk way too much. I had to tell people, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry I'm like this. I'll sell something on Marketplace and I'll meet somebody in a parking lot and we do the exchange. And then all of a sudden I'm like, let's hang out. You know, I'm just, I really enjoy meeting new people and like discovering new people. And so I tend to be like super friendly and open and like, oh my gosh, like, love your hat. Tell me more about that. Just asking a lot of questions because I have this naturally curious piece to myself. Like that air element is like easy to connect, very flowy, but still have like this grounded energy. So it's like I'm able to alchemize these two different frequencies together. And that's what makes for good conversations. All right. So when they learn to breathe each other in, they remember that language was always vibration first. It's all about your frequency. What do they say? Frequency, location, vibration. I had to figure that out. Anyway, so this morning, if you guys caught my live streams that I was doing this morning on my bike to work, which took an hour, um, I was I left home and the sun had not, it was like barely dawn. All right. The moon was out. I wish I had stopped and taken it. I was like, oh, I'll stop up in the future, but the sun came up too soon. But the full moon was out, right? We have the super moon. So the full moon is out, not a cloud in the sky. And it's like the sky is still dark and the moon is just bright, shining, and it's glittering on the water. And as the sun was coming up, one of my favorite stories was Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And in Through the Looking Glass, there is a poem called The Walrus and the Carpenter. And at one point, I had memorized it all. I could say the whole thing to you. But it's been so many years since I did that. I don't know that I could. But in the Latin languages, the sun is masculine and the moon is feminine. El Sol La Luna. But in the Walrus and the Carpenter, the sun is the sun is feminine and the moon is masculine. And they're obviously having a little bit of a fight. But I was like, why was it like that? The sun is like, did Lewis Carroll know something back then? Like, is there something that we don't know? So it's just an interesting thing. That's where my mind goes. I'm like trying to figure that out. So bloviation, you're talking nonsense, my dear errant twaddle. Oh, okay. Well, Keith Williams, there are several million other accounts on YouTube that you can go watch. Yes, you do talk too much. Anything out of that pie hole is too much. Okay. You don't have to be here. Yeah? Do we agree? You don't have to be here? People are so funny. Like, there's literally millions of other channels, millions of other streaming services all over the internet. You can go virtual gaming. You can go anywhere. You can listen to podcasts. You can go to Apple Podcasts. You can go to whatever services. There's like tons of attention grabbing services on the internet you can go to. And you come here and tell me I'm bloviating. You're funny. Hilarious. Anyhow, that's what I was thinking about this morning. It was a beautiful bike ride. And yeah, I kind of wished that I would have gotten the moon picture, though. It's very funny. I know, trolls. Dude, I love trolling too, so I'm not even mad at Keith Williams, but really, Keith? There's like millions of other places to be on the internet. Like millions. It's so funny. Oh, Nabel. Hilarious. All right. Well, I better go feed my child before he becomes super angry at me. It is National Taco Day today, so I'm going to go make some tacos. I hope you guys had a wonderful time. If you haven't yet, please remember to subscribe. On Thursday, I'm coming on and I'm doing a talk on the digital age series, and we're going to be talking about IVF, test tube babies, orphan trains, Cabbage Patch dolls, and how they're all related. Very interesting. Oh, I'm not angry. I'm really humored by Keith Williams right now. He's making me laugh, but I must go feed my child. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Attention is the greatest currency of all time. So I appreciate you giving your attention to my podcast today. I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening or morning or afternoon or wherever you're at. And thank you for watching Celestic Intelligence Podcast. Take care. Cheers. Bye.